Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Coroner. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, a good chunk of the focus of this episode is on, Diane, that being the situation that Nora, that was one of the women that Nora was trying to help. But before she could help, she had disappeared. Obviously, it looked like her husband Shane might have killed her, but obviously no evidence ever came up, so no investigation could ever really go too far with it. And obviously, Nora, obviously using the fake name of Emma, was on this podcast, which is interesting. One of the people on that podcast, which is like the podcast, even Donovan called it out, be like, Slaughtered or Wine, don't you think? That's a little kind of effed up name. It's like, and they got merch and everything. I mean that's just, it's just, I get where he's coming from. It's just kind of a little weird, just, especially because it's like, oh, would you like a t-shirt and everything too? It's like, but obviously, because that's just reality, because like a lot of crime drama like podcasts are pretty damn popular. But that the actor who plays Tim, I've seen, he must be a Canadian actor, because I've seen him in quite a few like Canadian shows. Like the things that come to my mind, I know him best for like Travelers and The Listener. So that was just kind of immediately what. But I think I've seen him in other things, but those two things are like the two prominent things that come to my mind when recognizing that actor. But regardless, basically, Nora went on that podcast to talk about Diane, and and obviously the podcast eventually ended up getting an email saying that Freddie, that basically Shane, his airtight alibi isn't as airtight as it seems. And obviously they end up, I think it was like Lucy who ended up like looking into everything and trying to figure out where the email came from. And it turns out the person who did it's Freddie's partner. Freddie is the dude who was Shane's alibi. It's like, we were at the racetracks the entire time. Well, it turns out in actuality, because for her, she didn't get it at first, because she was like, my first date with Freddie, we were just throwing around a little bit of, like, it was a very low-key date. And then the second date, he's throwing around a whole bunch of cash. Well, to be fair, it's actually Shane that was throwing around a whole bunch of cash. But, it's like, because she's like, it's weird. It's our second date, and he brings someone along. It's like, because he used the words to describe Shane as a collie. Because it turns out at the time he was actually a security guard. That's why like Donovan was like, "You're a security guard." I'm like, so how do you and it's not like you and Shane would just naturally be buddy. Like we work at the same place, sure, but you're at two different levels at this place. So he didn't understand. But it's like, Shane left his car and it's like, buy drinks. But so for Donovan, it's like, for a chunk of time, it was only drinks for two people. And then eventually at like 10:30, it became three, meaning that's when Shane returned. So it's like, you guys were living it up and everything. But the fact of the matter is, you didn't know he was going to go kill his wife. Because it's like, why would you defend this guy? But I guess it's like, this guy is so rich and powerful. And I guess he became buddy with you. And, because I guess for him, the reason why he covered for him all this time, too, was because it's like, now it looks like I was an associated with all this. Because obviously, like, Donovan had brought the file to Jenny for Jenny to look into, to be like, okay, so what do you think of all, because obviously it's like, he's like, I need you to look at this file through, your Jenny eyes, because he's like, there's no body or whatever. And obviously she's happy to help. So because obviously, she's also thankful for Donovan for, like, I think turning to her in a time like this, but also like, him not, turning on her last episode, with the whole gun situation, being like, no, I'm going to give you a chance to, figure it all out. Like, we're partners in this. We've had a bumpy road before now, but, we're good. And, I'm just trying to make sure you're okay and everything. So it turns, because obviously they felt like he probably disposed of the body and stuff like that. But then we find out, like, basically the van he used was basically like a cleaning supply van from a place. And so at first they were thinking like, maybe he used it to clean the body. But it's like, no, what he did was actually dissolve the body. And now that's even more horrendous. And even Donovan later on, when they're like, because obviously River was able to kind of she was able to cut open the pipe without destroying any evidence, because that's all that's most likely left of Diane. And it's like, he's like, I can't believe, like, to think that someone could do this to someone that they claim to love, to turn someone they loved they claim to love into all of this, Because even Nora was kind of like, it's that situation where it's like these stories always stay with Nora. But I think, because in particular, I think what hits her hardest about Diane is because it was a slow process. Like, obviously, women in these situations feel like they have no escape. And for Nora, it's like she was working little by little with Diane. It's like, okay, we work a little bit on a plan. She'll back away until she's comfortable enough and work a little bit more. All we needed to do was like plan out the final stages of it, and that was when she was going to leave. And around that time is when she disappeared. So I think that's why it hits Nora, because she was so close to getting her out of that situation, because she used to be, just so out there, and just like those videos of her just kind of like being very out there, but then eventually she just stopped. Anytime people would call her, she'd just make excuses, If people would ask her to go out, she'd just make excuses like she's sick or she wouldn't answer the phone. So it's just like showing just how much her demeanor and just everything about her changed because of this, And it's that sad situation of like, this could be so many women's stories if it wasn't for what Nora does, getting these women out of these abusive situations. Like, if it wasn't for her, there'd be a lot more Dianes. But it doesn't make the Diane situation, like, it doesn't matter how many people you save, that's always going to sit with Nora. Like, I wasn't able to save Diane, because there was a part of her that's like, I know how crazy it might sound, but she's like, there's some part of me that was like, wanted to believe that somewhere out there Diane was out there and she was living a life that she did manage to escape. But when the time came, it's like, I know you said you wanted to be here, but she was like, no, actually, I changed my mind. I want to hold on to the thought that maybe Diane's still alive just for a little bit longer, holding on to that hope, knowing like what this reveal was going to hold, but she just wanted to hold on to that belief a little bit, And obviously, when it was all said and done, though, like, obviously, the evidence does prove, they were able to, because Freddie eventually, with everything presented, eventually recanted, like, what he said. Because obviously, the reason this all got started, because Freddie's, significant other, she never knew Diane's last name. She never knew about this until she heard the last name Tucci, and it was like, oh my god, Shane Tucci, like, oh, this is his wife. Like, she never knew until that, and that's what crime podcasts do. They put, certain things back out there in the world, and information, that, I mean, it gave her, his significant other, this anonymous platform to like send this email to kind of be like, yeah, like, Shane wasn't there the entire time. His, like, his full alibi isn't as, airtight as he thought it was. So it's a sad situation. And even at the end of it, Donovan's like, it's like they were able to get justice for Diane, but he was like, at the end of it, he's like, I get this sinking feeling like I'm never going to see you again. And her and him kiss a little bit, but then she leaves, and it's like, he probably won't, just because it's like, with what she does, she needs her anonymity. And I think it's just like because we never really got too much into it, but obviously there was that phone call we got like a couple episodes ago when she was talking to that dude, and like the phone, like, we never found out what that relationship was. Like, I don't know whether that's someone that she cares about, that she had to leave behind to do what she's doing now. Like, it's what she doesn't leave much room for a personal life, because you need your anonymity so that you can help people disappear. Because if people can find you, they can find the women you're trying to help. Obviously that situation came up a couple episodes ago, but it's like, she kind of likes Donovan and Donovan likes her, but it's just, it has to, I don't know, we don't know, maybe this is the last time we see Nora, maybe we'll see more of her. But I think, as long, now that she was able to kind of get some help with this situation, she kind of has to disappear again to continue to help women. It's the only way, and she can't really get, it's like, this is kind of like her life's mission. I'm curious. I don't know if she really dived into why this was, because I would assume it had to, like, I mean, you don't need something personal in your life to lead you to do something like this, but I think it probably, there might have been a trigger for it. Like, something like this happened in her personal life that made her decide, like, I'm going to help women that are in a situation, like maybe she herself was in a situation, because I don't remember, maybe she explained that earlier in the season, and I don't remember her explaining that, but, I don't know. I'm curious to see how that ends up playing out. But at the same time, in this episode, there's some other key things that went down. Obviously, randomly, Liam's parents stopped by, and he's almost like, well, what are you doing here? They're like, we decided to stop by. And, they're hitting it off with Maceo and Ross. But they're like, oh, yeah, we brought this because of, your girlfriend's little son. And it's like, oh, actually, I'm the little one. And it's like, oh, it was like, how old is this woman? And her... his wife hits him, And it's almost like stop. And it's like, oh, Gordon walks in and it's like, oh, who's this? Is this her other son? And she hits him again. It's like, well, because it's like, oh, how old is this Jenny? Which is super messed up to say because Serinda, the actress who plays her, is only like in her 30s. So it's like, I'd say like what? She had to be like 20 when she had Ross, because Ross is like 16 or something. So it's like, shut up, saying she had Ross when she was fairly young. She's still young, you know? That was kind of like, shut up. That was mad disrespectful. But it's a complicated thing because obviously, and we also learned, I never realized Mal's full name was Malcolm. That explains why it's Mal and not Mal. Regardless, it's just like, oh, the moment I saw his name was Malcolm, I was like, oh, that makes it. But for her, it's like, oh, she talks about, it's like, oh, it's a whole conversation about adapting back to life. And, obviously his mom was a little worried about him, or rather he was worried, Liam was kind of worried about adapting back as well. But like his mom, it's like, it's like he's been out, Mal's been out of a coma for like a couple of days and you haven't been to visit. And he's like, I will. And she's like, when? And you can kind of tell probably why he doesn't want to do that, why he doesn't want to visit Mal, because probably like facing Mal would be also facing yourself. It's like probably because he probably thought in his head like Mal had it all together, Mal was okay, but for someone that he believed to be okay, like I think it's like you didn't see the signs, but also like if he's not going to make it, if he's not going to be okay, what's to say I'm going to be okay? Like, I think that gets him a little unnerved, seeing like a friend, someone in a similar situation as you go through that, because that means it's probably like almost like looking in a mirror, like of a possibility of where your life could be. But what was interesting was like, well, not interesting, it's actually sad. His mom, Liam's mom, it's like, oh yeah, it was an accident. And Liam was like, what? It's like, because I found him. She's like, no, it was an accident. He was cleaning his gun. That's what his mom was saying. And it's saying that that's what Mal's mom was saying, and that the rest is gossip. And Liam's looking at her like, what? And when it was all said and done, he was like, it wasn't an accident. And she was like, it was no one's business, because she's in denial. Because if she can be like, oh no, it was an accident, but it's like, obviously it wasn't an accident. He was in his uniform. It was on purpose. But it's like, by denying it, she's being like, no, because she's even like, oh, you're so strong. Like it's her trying to like reassure herself, like she's in denial. She's like, no, you're okay, you're strong, you would never do something like that. Mal wouldn't do that. You're both strong, because by making it seem like Mal would never do that, she doesn't have to worry about Liam. There's a sadness to it, because she's just like in denial, being like, no, you're okay, you're strong, you're my hero. And it's just like the heaviness in that even like, I think it weighs heavy on Liam that even his mom's in denial, because if the same thing happened to him, she'd be like, no, he was cleaning his gun. It was he would never do that. You would never do that, because you're so like, it's putting this pressure on him. I think maybe it's me reading too much into it, but I feel like that puts pressure on him to be strong. It's like you're strong. You're almost kind of looking at someone who would purposely do that as weak. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that's how she meant it, but it comes off. At least that's how I read it. And I would never think of someone in that situation as weak. It's just, everyone's got their demons and they weigh heavy on you, So that's just how I look at that situation. So that was just kind of like a heavy thing, because obviously, like when they start talking, because Ross kind of looks over and sees that Liam's kind of glazing out a little bit, while his parents, like, they're like, oh yeah, like he would name all the like chickens and stuff like that, because he thought like, hey, if I named the chickens, you wouldn't eat them. It's like, that didn't always work out, but partway through it, like everything kind of blurs out. I think all of this is just kind of like being surrounded by people and him just trying to block out the noises, because I think or rather what's in his head is making everything else kind of get blocked out. So it's almost, it's just all weighing on him, This also ties into the whole Kelly thing, which I'm just kind of more and more like, there's something up with that situation. It's like, Gordon, I told you not to call. I'm sorry, Jenny. Like, people tell you something's wrong with you. Don't worry. All you need is a good night's sleep. And she's like, thanks, Kelly. Before she even got finished, Kelly hung up. I was like, dude, something is off with this lady. Something is off. I can't quite figure out. Like, I had a feeling, like I said, it's like she wants to take Jenny's life. It's like her life wasn't really she's kind of lost, so she's deciding, like, oh, I'm going to take Jenny's life. And I'm like, I have an inkling, like, what that more might be, but we'll get to that soon enough. Because Jenny's side of things is interesting, because obviously she's helping out with the whole situation of, with Donovan's case and everything. But on her side of things, she's obviously in that sleep study or trying to get examined and everything, and her doctor's there to be like, wait, you're working on stuff, and he's like, why are you here? And don't say it's just for the sleepwalking. She's like, because I might hurt somebody if I keep going down this route. He's like, okay, so I'm gonna take the file, but he's like, when you're able to leave, you'll get the file back. Now he was like, now the thing is, what's weird for him is like, you're actually having more REM sleep here at this place than you are at home. And it's like, isn't that good? It's like, no, it's abnormal. Like, you would expect to have less REM sleep in a place that's foreign to you, that's not home. Like, so meaning she's more comfortable here than she is at home. So he's like, she's like, so my home it's like, we don't know. We have to study this a little bit more. But obviously she meets a dude named John, and John's willing to help her. He's like, oh man, I can't believe, I'm always down for a dare. And she was like, it wasn't really a dare. He's like, I'd like to think it was a dare, but like, he covers for her while she goes and gets the file and works on stuff, and she's helping work on the case, and he's helping her figure out all this stuff. She's like, oh my god, John, you're a genius. He's like, I am. And I'm like, okay, I won't lie to you, there was a part of me immediately in the episode I was like, are we gonna find out John's not real, that he's a part of her imagination or something? I thought when he was helping her, he's like, oh, clearing his throat and stuff like that, leading someone away. I thought the person was gonna come in there, what are you doing? And then later on she's like, where's John? Who's John? I thought that's where that was going to go. It kind of goes down that route, but it still took me by surprise. I was wondering, I was like, I'm probably thinking too much about it. And it turns out to be the case, because later on, it's like, because she's even pouring like that cleaning supply on herself and adding water. He's like, what are you doing? She's like, you're crazy. And he's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I am. But now, that helped her solidify, like, oh, like he dissolved the body and everything. And then her doctor comes in later on and it's like, he's like, I watched you in the camera. She's like, I'm sorry you told me not to. But, and she's like, don't get mad at John. John, I was like, oh shit. The moment he was like, who's John? I'm like, she's like, the other patient? He's like, there were no other patients here. She's like, I saw them on the camera. It's like, no, there was literally no one else here at this place today, and the other patients. Also, you never left this room. I'm like, oh shit, she's seeing stuff now. Oh god, it's bad enough when you're sleepwalking. She's literally seeing stuff now, and it's like, she's almost like, wait, what? He's like, let me show you something. And she was in her room the entire time. There were no other patients, so everything, even pouring the cleaning supply on herself, was all in her head. Even to the point later on, she had to call Donovan. She was like, did we actually talk on the phone today? He was like, yeah, several times. She's like, did I actually help you with the case? He's like, yeah. Because for her, it's a mind F in many different regards, because now it's like she has to figure out like how much of today was actually real. Did any of that happen with Donovan? Was that real? Like, I'm going crazy. And also, even if it was real, did I actually help him with the case, or was that just me trying? Like, I wasn't, because also that means like she did stuff without even realizing it again. So that means like it was more so about figuring out whether or not she was imagining it all, but also that means everything. She was able to figure this all out in her own head. I mean, it was her subconscious trying to tell her stuff, but it's like, I mean, that's still impressive. You're not 100% in your right mind, yet you were still able to figure out about the body being dissolved and everything. Because it's not like you figured that out. You thought you had a helper. You thought John was helping you. You thought you had supplies to test stuff out. It's like, no, it was all in your head. But he's watching her, and she's doing what she's normally doing when she's sleeping, because she's digging. And so he has her dig deep into it. And when she starts digging, what does she see? She sees Katie's body. She thinks it's about Katie, but John shows up again, and he's like, because at first I was thinking that too. It's like, okay, if John's made up, why'd you specifically choose him? Because it's like, it didn't make any sense. I was like, is he someone you know? Because it had to be for him to be specific like that. Like, how'd you come up with someone like John? And John's like the whole thing about, a train hides another train. Because basically, like, you're looking here seeing Katie, but there's something below what you're trying to see. It's blocking you from seeing what you're really supposed to be seeing. And she opens her eyes and looks, and Katie's gone. So Katie isn't the real thing. Maybe there's something even deeper there. And she's like, who are you? And it turns out he's John, was it Fernando, from the show that her dad keeps watching. And it's like, interesting. So now it's like, what the hell is that about? So it manifested. Maybe it's something connected to this, meaning it's connected to this whole Katie thing. Her dad, like, it's something there. Like, her subconscious is trying to tell her something. But I'm like, what? And then all of a sudden she gets back. It's all about finding the missing puzzle piece, and she finds it, and she's about to say something. Kelly's like, hey. And then she takes the puzzle piece and comes over there to Gordon like, hey, I got this. And then she sits over there. She's got her arms wrapped around, she's sitting there with Gordon, Ross, and Mateo. And it's that, once again, it's that thing of like, it seems like Kelly's trying to take your life. You know, and it's like you're not like it's like she's moseying in on it, and I'm like, there's something not right here. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it out some random ass like theory I was having. I was like, are we going to get revealed that she's actually Katie? That Katie isn't dead? That's actually her? That maybe. I mean, assuming, yeah, she has to be dead. Like, I was just wondering, well, like, was there something to that? But I'm assuming, like, once again, like, they ended up digging up where her child's body was. So that makes me think, like, there's probably more to this. Like, there's something about that first case that, like, her digging into the dirt, that it's going back to that. It's not just about Katie. It's about maybe because she keeps mistaking, like, her and her dad called Kelly Katie on an occasion on both of their situations. So that's why I'm like, there's something there. I'm like, what is up with this lady? Something's off. Something's not right here. Maybe we'll find out soon enough. But at the same time, there's a whole Liam situation. Obviously, he brings it up to her like, hey, like, the Jenny, that like my mom thinks what happened to Mal was an accident. It's like she knows it wasn't right. She's like, just talk to me. And Mal, you know, because I think it's her first time catching. I think I said no. I think I meant to say in that case, like, talk to me, Liam. But I think that was her first time catching Liam in that situation where he was near the dryer listening to it. But he was like, you know, just like go back upstairs. You know, I'll be up in a little bit. He just needed to be alone. But it's just like it's hard for him to talk about things. I think much like it is, you know, Jenny. So it's gonna be interesting to see where all this ends up. You know, ultimately taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.